So about a year and a half ago, you were officially diagnosed with Lyme disease. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey to that diagnosis?
Sure. So December 2018, just coming off of the high of being a newlywed, we had been married for 2 months at that point, had a wonderful honeymoon in Mexico. We get home and I'm not feeling well, and I'm attributing that to probably a lot of the, the activity associated with planning a wedding, executing the wedding, the whole 9 yards, and just, moving on with that part of our lives. It started with headaches, really terrible headaches that I had had headaches in the past, but not like this. This would be 4 or 5 days, unrelenting. And then I started to notice total body aches. So then I'm trying to explain away once again that, oh, it's cold and flu season, so it might be the flu. So I didn't initially seek any kind of medical attention or medical advice, but by about 6 to 8 weeks of constant body aches and being completely exhausted, I could sleep for 12 hours and wake up and be completely exhausted, and the headaches were a concern. But what really drove me to see a doctor, my primary care physician, were my hands. I would wake up in the morning and notice my hands were completely swollen to where I really couldn't even make a fist. So I did seek the advice of my primary care physician to have some lab work done. They did the lab work, and she suggested that I see a nephrologist. The nephrologist, of course, did his own blood work, and he said, well, you have stage 3 kidney disease, which was a shock to me because just months prior, I had had a physical exam prior to getting married. But again, I'm thinking we're probably trying to figure out what's going on here, and this is the road to a diagnosis. So his blood work came back, the results of blood work came back, his lab work, and he said, I think you should see an oncologist. Now, I'm a breast cancer survivor, so I'm very familiar with an oncologist and the reason for seeing an oncologist. So that was a total moment of shock for me when he mentioned I should see an oncologist. By this time, we were about probably 4 months into me being sick. The oncologist said that based on my signs and symptoms, it was looking more like multiple myeloma. Of course, this is an additional layer of shock for me because I'm thinking, this is probably, nothing real big is going to come of this, and we'll get to the bottom of it soon. He ordered more tests, more lab tests, and I just felt like I should use my own oncologist as well, like for a second opinion. So the first oncologist says, yes, it's looking more like multiple myeloma based on your lab results. My whole life came to a complete stop. Like, as any person would do, I ran to the internet to find out, what does this mean for me? What does this mean in terms of a future? What is life expectancy with this? And I absolutely drove myself nuts for 10 days. And I say 10 days because that's how long it took my own personal oncologist to get his lab results back. Well, his lab results came back and he said, no, you don't have multiple myeloma. You don't have cancer at all. So of course there's a relief there, but then how do you explain why I'm so sick? And trust me when I say I was relieved that it wasn't cancer, but I was also very concerned about why am I so sick? So we're now getting into about 6 months later. I've been referred to a neurologist to help me with my, to assist with a regimen for my headaches, to control the headaches. That didn't work. So the neurologist said, hey, I really think you should see a rheumatologist for your body aches and everything, and let's continue to do this regimen with, for your headaches, to control the headaches. So I see a rheumatologist, and he does, of course, more lab work. And he says, well, let's just see what this comes back as, and we can, we'll take it from there. Well, the lab test came back normal. Nothing was wrong. And he said, one thing we didn't test for was Lyme disease. Have you ever thought about, or has anyone ever tested you for Lyme disease? I said, no. He said, are you familiar with it? And I said, yeah, I'm familiar with it. And he said, well, do you recall ever being bitten by a tick or been in an area where you were around ticks. And other than our wedding day, which was down on the lake, we had not been exposed to any environment that would be conducive to tick, at least being exposed to ticks. So I said, sure, let's just try it. Because again, I want to find out what's going on. So he ran more blood work, and about a week later, he called me and said, I got good news and bad news. The good news is we figured out what's going on with you. The bad news is that you have late disseminated Lyme disease. You could have knocked me over with a feather, because I totally wasn't expecting that to be the diagnosis. But it started to make sense, all of my symptoms, it started to make sense. And from there, he decided, let's go ahead and put you on 3 months, which is, from what I'm being told, is not the usual, but 3 months of antibiotics. I did the 3 months, it didn't work. And then he increased it to 6 weeks of additional doxycycline. That didn't work. To be honest, I kind of gave up at that point. I kind of said, this is going to be my new norm, and I've got to figure out how to live with this. Because none of the medicines, medications, the treatments, I even tried a holistic health regimen, that didn't work. Unfortunately, I only found one Lyme literate doctor, and he basically said that other than treating me for the headaches and the joint pain and the body aches and stuff, there was not much that could be done. So that's where we are today, me trying to pull together the new me, which is totally different than the previous me.
That is unfortunately a story that so many are telling right now. It's a huge problem in our country, and it is under-researched and underfunded. And, you hear about a lot of these misdiagnoses, MS, fibromyalgia, those type of things. But me personally, have not heard of someone being told they have cancer. And so in going through all this, how important has it been to you to maintain your mental fortitude and health and obtaining emotional support during these long periods of poor physical health and uncertainty, especially adding on to COVID-19 and the election?
Sure. So I think what compounds the issue for me is finding people that, outside of support groups, finding people that can relate to what I'm going through. For all intents and purposes, when you look at me, you don't know that I need assistance getting out of the bed and into the bed. My husband is a very great resource for that. You don't know that I had to sell my car, which was a sports car, to get an SUV because I could not, sitting so low was extremely painful for me. There's so much, when you look at me, you don't know that I'm sick, and yet I'm very sick. My husband is probably the only one that knows how sick I really am. Even my family, they don't understand it. They look at me and they say, well, she's up and she's moving around, but what they don't know that it's like, for me, the analogy is like an hourglass. In the morning, I flip the hourglass over. Once that sand is completely drained from the top, so is my body. I can't move. I can't get around very well for myself or do much for myself. So it's a matter of immediately I'm on pain medication. But to try and manage something that I don't totally understand, I just am trying to manage the symptoms. But and the fact there aren't that many people out there that can serve as Lyme literate physicians, at least not in this area, in Georgia. I just feel like the best thing that I've been able to do is to be able to say no, to learn how to say no. The stress of so much in the world can actually trigger me to have some very serious complications to the point where I'm in the bed and can't get out for several days. So I've tried to manage my stress by saying no, by eliminating stress out of my life as well. And in some cases that included some people that were stressing me out. But from a cultural standpoint, it's difficult because as an African-American woman, I don't have any friends that know what this is about.